Liam, last time we spoke, it was just after the transfer window had closed, and a massive amount all of a sudden changed within that following week. Obviously, Mike Williamson has departed, Scott Lindsey has come in. Talk to us about that process and how you feel it's gone since.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a real indication of how quickly this game can change, because we were sat there and yeah, all that happened quite quickly.
Because maybe we even said everything seems to be going relatively smoothly at that point.
And look, still, I think there has been a lot of change. Change of ownership probably changed more than even I anticipated. I think the club kind of dealt with that really well, but what you can't control is the timing, and the timing of the deal being concluded just before the start of the season. I think there was a little bit of change that we, a change process we had to go through there. And then in terms of the approach from Carlisle, I think obviously Mike indicated that he was interested to explore that opportunity. And once he did, and there's a lot of reasons that go into that for Mike, then he obviously took that opportunity, and that threw us into another period of change. But I have to say that having come through that, I think obviously we're now in a really strong position. And Scott Lindsey is somebody I've known for a long time, somebody I've admired throughout his coaching career. I think you only have to look into the detail of when he's worked with certain people, when he's an assistant manager. That head coach has had very successful seasons, so he's supported some good people. And then obviously when the opportunity came for him to be a head coach at Swindon, and then the Crawley experience kind of speaks for itself. He was somebody that I felt very strongly about when the change obviously happened. The interesting thing is it's a new owner, and an owner that's going through the change for the first time. So asking some really good questions about the profile. And obviously I'd been in that situation with our previous chairman a few times and maybe been quite clear on the type of profile that we would go for, but this time had somebody new asking fresh questions about the kind of person that they wanted in the role. But thankfully, once we met Scott, it was very clear that he ticked a lot of not just the boxes that I was looking for from a football perspective in terms of that alignment, but also for Fahad and for Neil, the type of person that they wanted to take the club forward, and how keen he was for the opportunity was evident.
Do you think perhaps he might not have been number one target then if Pete Winkleman had still been in charge, or is that
He was my number one target, very, very clearly. But I do see your point, because I think he is a different type of leader, certainly, different type of voice than what we've had for a number of years. But I think the timing was right for that. I think the group kind of needed that, and so far he's done all right.
Yeah, well, I mean, what do you make of the start so far? I mean, it's certainly in the league, it's been fantastic of late.
Yeah, and I think, look, that's the bit that everybody sees, but the detail behind the scenes, how he came in, how he arrived, his messaging, all these things, I think he's nailed really well. I think he's changed certain things, and look, change is one of the biggest barriers to consistent high performance. But he obviously thought that there was an approach he needed to, tweak in, certainly the way we press. So the way we train has slightly changed. That always happens when you change manager. There's always a little bit of, their intensity in training is different. The distances that they're covering in training is slightly different. Every manager has a different approach. So there's been a period of change, and performances then are a little bit up and down. Like we haven't been, I would say, at our best for periods of games. But we found a way, and that I think is a little bit of Scott's character going into the players and into the group, and the group's almost gaining their own personality now, where they can find a way. We know more than being 2-0 down and finding a way to come back, and I think that's a really healthy habit to show, and I think we will get better. We'll continuously get better, but there's a kind of confidence growing and a belief growing, I think.
And I think this is probably more like the team that you thought was put together at the start of the season. Obviously, it wasn't a great start to the season. We can't beat around the bush there, but I think now it's looking like the team that we all expected to hit the ground running in August.
Yeah, for sure. And look, there's been a lot made of the squad. It's a big squad. The size of the squad. There's been a lot of talk about that, but we needed everybody. So I feel like it was probably bigger than we planned. Obviously, change of ownership towards the end of the window changed the dial slightly in what we could do. But ultimately, we have needed everybody. I mean, MJ came in, even under Mike, I think, played 2 back-to-back games, and then he comes in again. He's excellent against Swindon. Dean Lewington comes on at half-time the other week. Scott Hogan's come into the group. We've lost Liam Kelly for periods. Tom Carroll's played. Joe White dropping deeper. We have needed everybody in different places, and to keep winning games. And amongst all those changes is obviously really good. And then there's also been some exceptional quality. I mean, Alex Gilby, we probably undersell what he does on a consistent basis every week, and then players like Luke Offord, obviously, who've been outstanding. So yeah, I feel like the group is really starting to show that potential. There was signs, I think, early in the season. We missed some big chances in games. I think some of the performances were kind of better than the results showed. But confidence and group personality, and actually the biggest thing that kind of brings these things out is winning games. And for the group to go through these kind of experiences together, that will only help them gain more confidence and then hopefully kick on.
On the squad size, then obviously we're approaching January. Is more focus going to be on outs than ins, perhaps? Or, I mean, as you mentioned, I think Scott's used about 31, 32 players already since he's taken over. And he's got, I think, 37 pros, he said, on the books. So, it is a vast amount, but as you mentioned, you kind of need them all, but it is a heavy squad. Yeah,
it is. I mean, some of those guys, obviously, Dara's out on loan, Charlie's gone on loan, so there's some planned things in there. The first half of the season is, I think if anybody pays attention to these things, we do tend to go slightly bigger in the first half of the season and then trim it for the second. That's the pattern of what we've done for the last few years. And that's because the first half of the season is loaded with all your cup games, the EFL Trophy, the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup are all in the first half of the season, but we now head into the second half of the season with pure clarity post-January what we will have left. So, look, I think there's probably 3 parts to this. The first is that the group's done really well, and everybody's contributed. So I think we are not counting down the days to the window. We're in a good place, and we're really pleased with the quality that's on show. Then the second part is there will be some players that probably want to play more than they are playing. So I anticipate that there will be some interest in some players maybe who are making the squad on a regular basis, or want to have an eye on the summer in terms of what their futures might look like. I think that normally happens. And then the third part is opportunity, right? So it's the recruitment process is continuous. It's just never ending. The guys in the department have to prepare for anything that we might need in terms of injury crisis, or if we lose somebody, they have to prepare players for every scenario. So that process is just kind of continuous, and we'll assess the opportunities that are there, if there's any, for us to improve the team.
Scott will obviously have come in, and I think we even mentioned it with Mike. He has inherited somebody else's team, has tried to build around it, but he'll obviously have different ideas, or potentially different ideas to maybe some of the targets that you were looking at for this January. Is that so?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you try and make the reason Scott was a really clear target, I think, for us is because of the alignment in approach. So, yeah, there's always going to be slight tweaks. There's always going to be preference for certain attributes in positions. But actually, when we've sat down and gone through how we want certain positions to look, there's not that loads that's kind of different. I think generally, some of the challenge we have in planning for the future and just how the team looks is athleticism. We're always on a scale of technical ability to athleticism, and because of the way we play, we need high levels of technical ability. And sometimes the team can look short, I think, of athleticism. So that might be an area that we look at, just in terms of how the game's evolving. But I think we're generally aligned. It's just, with all these things, I think you appoint a head coach or you bring staff in, and generally I think you have strong alignment in the way that Scott approaches the game and the type of football that we want to see as a club. But then there's always things that they add. There's always that 20% that they can add, and he's done that in his leadership style and his voice. And so yeah, I expect him to certainly have a say in the type of profiles that we'll target.
You mentioned briefly Alex Gilby there, and his athleticism, his numbers that he's put out since coming back to the club. I wrote a story last week about the calibre of players that his numbers kind of reflect. There's the likes of Mo Salah and Cole Palmer and guys like that. A few months ago, signing a new deal, and those things are a massive part of this club as well, aren't they? And securing those players and ensuring that they're here for long term.
100%. Yeah, I mean, Gilby's been absolutely terrific. I think before you even get to those goals and the output, just the consistency and the ability to reproduce that level every week is really, really impressive. And then off the pitch, the stuff that he embodies day to day, his voice around the training ground, just the type of character that he is. I think he's gone over and above everything that we expected in terms of when we brought him back to the club. And I can't say enough positives about him really, because I think, like I said, just to produce that level of consistency is something on its own. And then when you see the goals that he's added to his game, I think when we first started playing him in that number 10 position, and he makes those runs, like, people would question whether he would score enough or contribute enough to goals. And I think it's safe to say that he's done that.
I think, when he came back, seeing him in that more attacking role, most people, obviously, from watching him for 3 years here, saw him as a more defensive player, using his athleticism to defend more so than attack, and just unlocking that side of him has made him look a wholly new player. Yeah,
for sure. And then you're right, though, you still get all that, his ability to press and spring out from that number 10 position. There's non-negotiables in the game about second balls, about carrying the ball, about all those things that you wouldn't really jump to about an MK Dons performance, but he does all those things as well. And he happens to be on a really good run of scoring form, scored some big goals, kind of big moments, getting us back into games and things like that. I'm sure he'll absolutely be looking to continue that.
A new CEO as well in position, a position that the club hasn't had for a little while now. How important for you has it been to have someone like Neil Hart in position?
Yeah, look, really, really important. I think when the chairman took over and the ownership group came into the club, one of their early priorities was securing a CEO. They were very clear on that, and it's been really, really positive to work with Neil. I knew him briefly. We've been at kind of similar conferences and stuff in the past, so it's not a brand new relationship, but I mean, the stuff he's added, he's been really impactful, I think, on off the pitch stuff, but also on the pitch, just having that person to speak to who's got a different lens. Look, he's come from Bolton, who were a really competitive club in League One, continuously trying to get out of that level, so he knows what that's all about. He was around it, I think, when they made their charge up League Two as well, so he's certainly got a kind of lens to offer on the football, but his absolute focus has been the fan experience, growing the attendances, that kind of thing. Our role commercially and things like that, and I think he's added significantly, like really significantly. Really pleased to be working with him.
And how is it working with the new owners? How involved are they in I suppose, the day-to-day?
Yeah, it's good, really good. Slightly different, obviously. Previous chairman, very local, very very involved.
Involved is the word, isn't it?
Yeah. Fahad, just as passionate, just as keen to know what's going on. But obviously there's a distance element when he's not here for certain periods. But he's back next week, actually. We've got several meetings planned to catch up with Scott, catch up ahead of the Christmas period and the transfer window and things like that. So, but he's calling me about all kinds of things, and not always about our games, but other games that he's noticed that are going on, that he's watched on TV. So he's so in tune with the level, which is really good. So it's a slightly different approach. We'll sit down next week. We'll spend a bit of time reviewing the performance, and then planning for the future.
Is it a blank checkbook in January then?
No, look, certainly not. I think there's the real world we have to adhere to, right? We're one of the most competitive teams in the league financially and away, as we are. And as I said, the group's done really well. So we're not sat here waiting to open our advent calendars waiting to count down till January. That's not the case. I'm really looking forward to Tuesday night and watching this team grow in personality, watching the players that are coming back, Tom Carroll to come back, Nico Lawrence to come back. Like, we've got some really good quality. So, January will be about, if there are opportunities there to strengthen the team, we will assess them. We'll sit down with Scott and we'll go through them. But right now, the focus is keeping this run going, making sure we're in as a competitive position as possible, getting ready for, Pete, I was talking to somebody the other day and spoke about like the end game of the season, and that probably starts kind of late Feb into the last few months. So we've got to make sure that we're in as strong a position as we can be ready for that. And I think we will be. And I think with the players coming back, we'll get stronger. Well,
I mean, Scott says you're the biggest club in the division. So, I mean, I sort of...
Who am I to argue?
Well, that's it. But at the same time, it's not something you often hear a manager say. It's not something that that teams want out there sometimes. They might think it behind the scenes, but to put it out there and to tell us in the press that that's what they think, it's quite rare for a manager to come out and do that. And I think it's a shift in mentality at the club of, well, why not? Why not react like that? Why not treat it like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's Scott's leadership style, the way he's attacked this challenge so far. He's not been afraid to mention the word promotion. That's the clear target of the group. I think so. I think that's the way of owning it and going, we should be competing. MK Dons in League 2 should be competing for promotion. Let's be really clear about that. What you need then is people brave enough, strong enough, and prepared to take on that challenge. And he's embodying it more than anybody. And if that rubs off on our players in even a small percentage, then we'll be in a good place. Because when Scott says it, he means it. And that's what I was talking about, the slight difference in leadership style. And it's been really welcome, his voice, is the way he handles those situations. And he's the exact same day to day in the dressing room with the guys. And I think that's been one of the most impactful things.
Frustrated to see the game go on Saturday?
Yeah, I think so. We obviously you travel up there. We'd stayed over. I was there on a Friday night, so I went to the stadium with Scott. He stepped on the pitch. It was pretty clear. So whilst we're frustrated that we couldn't play the game, as soon as you step on the pitch, you think, well, it's not playable. So the temptation then is to think, right, what can we do? And there was a brief chat about, can we get the groundsman and he get his fork out and all that? But I think ultimately, with the forecast that was in front of us, it was just too difficult. So we tried to make the call as early as we could. Obviously, there's so much logistics that go into that. The referee's got to get there. That was the biggest thing. He was in Liverpool. The referee had to get across. So that was the reason for it being the time that it was. But it was pretty clear we were able to make that decision pretty quickly for our supporters.
I think that was probably the key, wasn't it? Because it's such a long journey. I mean, we were all certainly on the road on the way up, and the earlier you can call those and make those decisions, it's probably the better for the supporters in the end.
Yeah, and that's that is genuinely one of the priorities at that point, because the last thing we want is everybody to do a completely wasted trip. I know probably people were definitely on the way and inconvenienced slightly, but all you can do at that point is make the best decision in the quickest time frame that you've got.
And I suppose finally, you're probably one of the sole remaining people from probably this time last year. I mean, behind the scenes, so much has changed. The management staff has changed. It's probably only us that are still similar faces. I mean, even Joe's come in relatively recently as well. But it just shows how quickly football can change, and how it's not just the playing staff, but it's almost all encompassing.
Yeah, I guess that is how it looks from the outside. Certainly the management group, and I guess the people that we see, but there is real longevity in some roles at this football club. Simon Crampton, Adam Ross, Tom Bromley, even in the academy, quite stable stuff going on there. And ultimately, look, whenever I get in a room with owner or Neil or the recruitment team, you're looking for the right people, players, staff, or manager, head coach, to come in and make an impact, join MK Dons and kind of embody what we do. And I think we've got that now. I look at the way that Scott's staff, and we haven't spoken about them, but they are superb, by the way. The work ethic in his coaching team completely matches Scott. and how they've kind of plugged into the rest of our staff, and like the harmony that we've got there is good. We've actually got a football management meeting tomorrow with all the heads of departments because there's no game, so we're able just to take a moment and kind of check and challenge what we're doing. Is there anything, let's actually bank what's going well, talk about that, and then think about some areas of innovation or areas that we want to improve. So that will take place tomorrow. And for that to be successful, you need high levels of trust, you need psychological safety in the group. So I think that's in a good place. And then ultimately, people would have heard me speak about change in the playing group and signing high numbers. We still, believe it or not, I'm still striving to get to a position where we don't have to sign, 12, 13, 14 players or something. We need to get that down. But getting on a journey of success and, promotion and those kind of things, if we keep that core together, and the signs are that this core is good and they're coming together now with their shared experiences, then I think we're in a strong place. And I'm really excited that we've got some good games coming up, some, challenges in the top 7. Christmas period looks really challenging. So, really excited. Keen to see the crowd keep going. The support's huge for us. We've really felt that, home and away. Particularly at home, it's definitely growing. There's definitely an appetite for what we can do there. So it's just about keeping it going, staying consistent in our performances and behaviours, and believing that we can do it.